Hello, my name is Nieta Austin, and this is my Developmentally Appropriate Practices project. My current educational setting is the school is the largest in the district with approximately 850 students. It is in Madison County, and it's part of the Jackson-Madison County school system in Jackson, Tennessee. The school has one principal, three vice principals, three guidance counselors, three SPED teachers, and approximately 55 regular classroom teachers. The school is located on the fringe of Jackson, Tennessee. However, it serves many students from multiple neighborhoods, including some inner city areas. One section of the school building houses the district's middle school academic academy, which serves gifted and high-achieving honor students. I do not teach in that section. I teach in the traditional section of the building. The description of the population, the students are all in the 6th through 8th grade. Approximately 75% of the students are classified as racial minorities. The population is a mixture of black, Hispanic, white, non-Hispanic or Latino, Asian, and biracial students. The students I work with have socioeconomic backgrounds ranging from poverty to middle class. Now, they are going to be lower middle class or maybe some middle class. Most of the students in Jackson, Tennessee, if their parents have the money, send their students to private schools unless they can get into something like the Honors Academy, or they actually move out of the county and go to surrounding county public schools. I teach in 8th grade science. Depending on the year, I'll have between 88 and 120 students. The age range, if you look at how they are at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, I'm working with kids from 12 years 11 months to 14 years 8 months. So for this assignment, I'm just going to refer to it as a 13 to 14 age bracket. Based on the physical milestones that adolescents reach, they have the physical ability to play musical instruments. They play games and complete tasks that require physical endurance, complete lengthy writing tasks, and have the physical ability to complete complex drawings. Their fine motor skills and gross motor skills. For a child between 14 and 18 years old, fine motor skills will have mostly developed in relation to feeding. At this time, adolescents will be developing motor skills through activities such as competitive sports, learning to drive a vehicle, or playing musical instruments. That's Curling 2022. In the physical milestones, the brain develops through the prefrontal cortex, the social brain, the limbic system, and the neural networks. This continues throughout adolescence, minus 2017. There's breast development, deepening voice, developing acne, developing body hair, distal proximal development, growing taller up to 5 inches a year. Girls' growth spurts at this point are starting to slow down, and boys are starting to take off. So by age 14, most boys are taller than most girls, minus 2017. They gain weight. The average individual will gain 40 to 50% of their adult weight during adolescence, as well as marked sex differences and muscle and fat composition, which is minus 2017. There's an increase in muscle mass. Boys add more internal, including heart and skeletal muscles, than girls, minus 2017. There's primary sexual characteristics develop, starting their menstrual cycle, sweating more, and associated body odor. Testicular growth, unless there is a minus 2017 at the end of the line. The citation is Gordon 2024. 3 or more physical characteristics for individuals in this age group. So, number 1, origami activities, crafts to develop fine motor skills. Number 2, playing card games develops fine motor skills, and at the individual fans the cards and picks up the cards off the table. Working on puzzles with smaller pieces and large quantities of pieces provides opportunities to develop fine motor skills as they pick up pieces and place them in correct spaces. Number 4, board games suitable for fine motor skills as they pick up and place the game pieces. That's Drobnichak 2024. And then there's competitive sports or recreational sports, for example, basketball, football, softball, tennis, pickleball. 6 is playing musical instruments in the school band or recreationally, for example, the clarinet, trumpet, saxophone, flute, guitar, or drums. Curling 2022. Focusing on activities that help develop fine motor skills is essential, especially in today's digital age, as children spend more time on their phones, playing video games, watching TV, and using computers and iPads. It can limit the ability to build strength in the small muscles of the hands, weakening the development of fine motor skills. Orlando 2022. So, cognitive milestones description, abstract thinking. They begin to understand the concept of a person as the sum of how they perceive themselves, how they think others perceive them, how others perceive you, and how others perceive that you perceive how they perceive you. That's kind of something to wrap your head around there, but that's a principle that was presented to me and taught to me in 1986 in my Freed Hardeman speech communication class. And it's one that has always stuck with me, and I think about that a lot as I'm dealing with kids. They enter the stage where they feel their perspective is unique and others will not understand it, and they begin exploring their religious beliefs. They're pushing boundaries. They push for independence and test their parents and other adults' authorities. They begin to understand that everything is not black and white, and there are many times what is right falls into a gray area. They use more figurative language, metaphors, understand the concepts of sarcasm, have more difficulty in school as the skill level required in their classes increases. They have logical thinking. They can solve problems that have more variables, such as quadratic equations. Gordon 2024. Cognitive names, descriptions of abilities. So, now these are risk factors, but they're not saying that it's actually going to happen. Girls who physically develop mature bodies, sexual impulses, and emotions without necessarily having the maturity to control those impulses or to use forethought in making decisions about alcohol and drug use or sexual behavior, minus 2017. Early maturing girls are at risk for low self-esteem, eating disorders, depression, weak family relationships, alcohol abuse, and reduced education achievements, minus 2017. Boys have a whole different experience, because if they mature early, then a lot of times they're more popular, they're more self-confident and more athletic than boys that mature later in adolescence, maintenance 2017. So Piaget's cognitive theory of development is a significant framework that guides our understanding of human development, extends from birth to adolescence, about 21 years old. Piaget believed that each person experiences development in two ways: through nature, continuously on the previous stage of development, and nurture, discontinuously in stages that are influenced by environmental factors. Children participate in their learning, and learning is not passive. Individuals have schemas or mental models of their world, McLeod 2024, that are developed by exploring and interacting with their environments, Manus 2017. When the brain acquires new knowledge, it enters a state of equilibrium as it processes the knowledge. The brain returns to equilibrium once it has processed and understands the latest knowledge, Elliott 2023. In the process of reaching equilibrium, the brain either adds new knowledge to the existing schema, assimilation, modifies the schema, accommodation, or creates a new schema, accommodation, McLeod 2024. Cognitive domain is so this graphic is one that I put together. It's not the graphic that you typically see. The one you typically see is in a circle, and the circle has assimilation leading to disequilibrium and accommodation leading to equilibrium. But I drew these graphics differently because disequilibrium is associated with growth, and equilibrium is associated with rest. And so when we are at equilibriums and our minds are resting, we're not growing. And so this is based off, the information here is based off McCoy 2024. But as you have information that comes in and knowledge that comes into your brain, then it goes up and you enter a state of disequilibrium. And at that point, either you're going to assimilate it and you're going to add it into your existing schema, or you're going to accommodate it and you're going to revise your schema, or you're going to create a new schema. But as you struggle, that's the growth part. And then once you've resolved that struggle, you're going to enter equilibrium, which knowledge now makes sense and it is usable. And now you can rest. So there's 4 stages of the theory of cognitive development, and that he says that every individual moves through these stages as they develop. So you have the sensory motor stage, which is birth to 18 to 24 months, and it's objects permanence. You have the pre-operational, which is 2 to 7 years old, which is symbolic thought. You have concrete optional, which is ages 7 to 11 years, which is a logical thought. You have formal operational, which is adolescence to adulthood, which is scientific reasoning. And this is a chart from McLeod 2024, or McLeod. And so your sensory motor stage, the characteristics are that they know the world through movements and sensations. They learn about the world through basic actions such as sucking, grasping, looking, and listening. And they have object permanence. They learn that things continue to exist even when they cannot be seen. They realize that they are separate things from the people and objects around them. And they realize that their actions cause things to happen in the world around them. And so this is a direct quote from Cherry 2024. My graphics over here, the one I really want to stick out is, hey, where did my teddy bear go? It was behind that cushion. I know it's here somewhere. I can't find it. I'm going to look for it because it didn't just disappear. It's here. Let's look for it, Mom. Age 2 to age 7, that pre-operational stage. So they begin to think symbolically and learn to use words and pictures to represent objects. They tend to be egocentric and struggle to see things from the perspective of others. And they're getting better with language and thinking, but still tend to have very concrete terms. So this chart is a direct quote from Cherry 2024. And over here on my graphics, I have I am Wonder Woman. Yay! That's part of pretend play. Pretend play has a whole lot to do with this cognitive development. And then the other one I really want to point out to you is egocentric. So I am self-centered. My opinion is what counts. Oh, wait. I don't grasp yet that you have an opinion. And so the graphics are from Avila 2020. The third stage is the concrete operational stage. They begin to think logically about concrete events. They begin to understand the concept of conversation. The amount of liquid in a short, wide cup is equal to that in a tall, skinny cup. So thinking becomes more logical and organized, but still very concrete. And they again use inductive logic or reasoning from specific information to a general principle. This chart is from Cherry 2024. So over here on my graphics that came from Avila 2020, I have here classifying. So they're going to classify books, or is it a magazine? Then they're going to be thinking about conservation. If I pour my sand from my toy truck into a bucket, I'll still have the same amount of sand. And then they start thinking logically, how to solve problems in being able to use certain steps every single time to solve that problem. And then all of a sudden they realize, not only do I have a problem, not only do I have an opinion, but you have an opinion too. And so then there's the last stage, which is 12 years and beyond. And this is where they begin to think abstractly and reason about hypothetical problems and begin to think more about moral and philosophical and ethical and social and political issues that require theoretical and abstract reasoning. And they begin to use deductive logic or reasoning from specific information. And the information in this chart is a direct quote from Cherry 2024. And I think, my graphic over here is from Avila 2020, but I think what I really want to point out to you is one thing here, and that's your social and moral issues. Because in my 8th grade classroom, you'd be surprised at how much they talk about, even without me instigating it, how much they talk about issues and they start to really voice their opinions. And this is something that, since they really focus a lot on athletics, this is a debate that you could very easily have in my classroom. Should individuals who were born male, have gone through the transgender process, be allowed to participate in female sporting events? Now, would that really be fair? I can very well picture some of my students sitting back and talking about this at the beginning of school next year, or even some of them were still talking a little bit about it at the end of school last year, when you had a swimmer that had taken away all the medals away from all these girls. And so that's one of the issues that's very much that's on their minds. So my students are in this 13, 14-year-old group. They are in that operational stage of cognitive development. They have reached a stage where they are learning as much about how to think as they are about concepts. Their application is the goal, not regurgitation. And their brains are ready to create, analyze, brainstorm, and think critically. And my little thinking guy over here, he's from Avila 2020. So what kind of strategies can we use? Well, when the formal operation stage of development has been reached, an adolescent's brain has matured to be capable of critical and abstract thinking, complex problem solving, capable of understanding multiple points of view, and reaching logical conclusions. The list of activities provided in Paget's theory and stages of cognitive development, McCloy 2024, are all appropriate activities for teachers to utilize in the classroom for adolescents in the formal operational stage of development. So, first, hypothesis testing. That's part of the scientific method, making and testing predictions. 2, abstracted thinking. For example, applying scientific formulas, solving algebra problems, assignments involving critical thinking about ethical topics. Number 3, problem solving. For example, design a bridge using a specified criteria like height, length, and number of toothpicks. From toothpicks and glue that will hold a designated amount of weight. My students did that at the end of the year. I gave them a certain length, how high the clearance had to be, and they had to have, it had to be able to support from the middle about 8 pounds. And you'd be amazed at how many of them were successful at that. And the ones that weren't, they could tell you why they weren't and what they'd do differently if they had the opportunity. But we spent like 2 weeks on that, so if they didn't do it in 2 weeks, we were running out of time at the end of the year. I would have been glad to let them keep working on it. They really enjoyed it a lot, and I enjoyed watching them. Debate and discussion. For example, form groups and have the students examine the evidence for the Big Bang theory and discuss based on the evidence, do they believe in the theory? And if not, what they believe created the universe and what scientific evidence they can to back up their beliefs. And feedback and questioning. Use open-ended questions which require students to give reasons for their answers. For example, for these reasons, I conclude that global warming is not caused by using vehicles powered by gasoline produced from petroleum oil. Now note that the examples in 3, 4, and 5 that I have used are things that I would or have already used in my classroom. So we're moving on to Bandura's social cognitive and social learning theory. His theory proposes that human behavior is the product of the interaction between personal factors, environmental influences, and behavior patterns. He emphasized the role of observational learning, social experience, and reciprocal determinism in human behavior, suggesting that people are both influenced by and actively influence their environments. Nickerson, 2024. An individual is more likely to imitate a behavior they have observed that receives a positive response than a negative one. Nickerson, 2024. 4 processes that influence observational learning is number 1, attention. They have to pay attention selectively and they have to sustain that attention. Number 2, retention. Practice what they have been observed to remember those steps. Number 3, motivation and reinforcement. Must be motivated to keep repeating for it to become a learned behavior. Number 4, self-efficacy. An individual has to believe that they can learn to be able to do the behavior and learn. So note, the stronger the connection between the person modeling the behavior and the observer, the more motivated the person is to learn the behavior. So this can come into play in a classroom. That teacher-student relationship is so important, as long as, and if you're talking about sports, if that student likes that coach or not. Here is a graphic that I took from Lee 2021, but I actually built the graphic myself because I like my colors and stuff, and I like the way I displayed it a little bit better. But behavioral skills, practice, self-efficacy, environmental factors, social norms, accessing community, influence on others, ability to change your own environment, cognitive factors, knowledge, expectation, and attitudes. So they all are part of determines human behavior. And so so these three different factors all come in. Now, they also affect each other. So on this particular slide, the center graphic is Nickerson 2024, and it's showing how each factor can turn around and influence another. So behavior can affect environmental can affect personal can affect behavior, and it just goes back and forth. They can all do that. So environmental, Dixon in 2019 said it was laws, objects, spaces, and ACEs. Personal was cognitive, emotional, and physical, and behaviors, actions, and decisions. Now, an example of this that you can see very easily in school is if you have a child who has experienced ACEs, say for an example, child abuse, then they're probably going to have a smaller hippocampus in their brains, and that in turn is going to lead to behavior problems in school. Now, if that happens, then they may turn around and they may repeat that cycle, and it may even influence, have an effect on future generations. One of the main studies that we had that we talked about here in this class was the Bobo doll study. It was significant to me. It's very demonstrative. The graphic over here was from Bandura's Social 2022. So basically, he had a group of three groups of kids. And the first group, he put in a room with a Bobo doll, and an adult come in and just beat the fire out of it. The second group was a group that adult came in and played with Tinker Toys, just sat there passively and done it. And then the third group, they didn't get any guidance. And so what happened is that I found out that when the kids later on were put into rooms and they could do what they wanted to, they had an assortment of toys that they could choose from, but the kids that had experienced aggressive behavior turned around and they were aggressive. And the ones that, for the most part, that saw passivity, that's what they did. And so the follow-up from that was that children are more likely to model aggressive behavior when rewarded than when the modeler is punished. So adolescents have reached a stage where they are very social. Friends have more influence than parents, and they are self-conscious. Having pauses in the classroom will appeal to them, and having multiple learning modes will connect all learners. All information on the chart below is a direct quote from Bandura's Social 2022. I just put it into the graph. So a strategy, managing the classroom. Teachers can use positive and negative reinforcements to motivate students to perform certain behaviors. Example, verbal praise for students staying on task, participating or showing up prepared to learn on a consistent basis. Transitions or clarifications. Teachers can use physical and or verbal cues to elicit student attention. Initiating a call and response using a hand signal or pointing to an object. Planning for instruction. Teachers may incorporate multimodal learning to help students retain new information. Presenting new content through visual, auditory, and kinesthetic modes. Supporting intrinsic motivation. Teachers can use rewards and reinforcements to help students develop confidence, self-efficacy, and a love for learning. Offering verbal praise or constructive feedback in regard to progress, tracking, and goal setting. And finally, incorporating cooperative learning. Teachers can create time in each lesson for students to practice and learn with diverse students models in low-stakes activities. An example is we know that students pay more attention to their friends and their peers than to their adults. And so you can do parent share is a good one. So here is just a graphic that shows your social cultural themes. So you've got intellectual tools, adaptation, socialization and play, and culture and the environment. The social cultural development studies the influence that peers and adults and cultural beliefs have on the learning in children. Avella 2022. So here's part of your description here. On the sides I have Avella 22 graphics that I took that show the social interactions, the cultural influences, and the social level and individual level down here. And so children are active in forming their understanding of the world, Avella 2022. Biological and social factors interact in development, and continuities and discontinuities occur during development, Manus 2017. Both experiences that happen early in life and later in life are important. Cognitive, such as language, memory, and problem solving, could best be understood within their social and cultural context, Manus 2017. Learning occurs in two levels: a social level, how the learner interacts with the community, and the individual learner. Learning occurs inside of the child's mind. Interpsychological and intrapsychological learning, Avella 22. So we should note, though, that except for inherent characteristics, children are born with a blank slate. And they say that we learn as we interact with others. Pretend play activities are essential for child development. Older mentors, or those with experience and knowledge, impact how we develop our view of the world and how the world in relation to us as individuals work. Theory primarily focuses on one's behavior through time, how that person changes over time, how their attitudes change, what transitions their personality form, mere innocent children to whatever they become in the late stages of their lives. Throughout all life stages, including childhood, adolescence, and maturity, there is a tendency for behavior to be altered. Teaching and 2022. So, what kind of strategies can we use? How does that work in? Well, the Tennessee Education Framework instructs teachers to be facilitators of learning while the student takes charge of their learning. Strategies that utilize this social learning theory go hand in hand with the strategies of the Tennessee Department of Education. In the 8th grade, students enter the development stage where social interactions and their friends are significant. Strategies aligned with this theory also supports what is important to the students, so they will invest instead of fighting the methods being used in the classroom. And so, based on this theory, here's some things that we can do. Reciprocal teaching, where students take turns leading discussions. The discussions include predicting, clarifying, questioning, and summarizing. Activities that involve talking, listening, and observing students learn new information. Teaching and 222. That's your jigsaw strategy, your turn and talks, your peer tutoring, and your group works. Then you have the teacher assesses the students and determines their zonal proximal development, and then uses that determination to plan their lessons. They look at their jump starts at the beginning of the class, their questions and observations during class, and their exit tickets. The reciprocal teaching activities listed enable students to learn as they interact with each other. And so his work in particular may be applied to educators in the classroom using the zone of proximal development. So Avella 2022 and Kurt 2022. So the zone of proximal development, the ZPD, is defined as a space between the learner is able to do without assistance and what the learner can do with assistance from an adult or a more skilled peer. So you got the 3 stages. Can't do it even with guidance. Can do it with guidance. And can do independently. So that ZPD offers the best chance to acquire new skills. It's considered the sweet spot. And that's from Avella 2022. So in this graphic, you can see down here that if an assignment's too easy, it falls into what they actually can already do. There's no growth. And then your zone of proximal development is what they can do it with assistance, and that's where you get growth. And then if it's too hard and it's beyond their reach, they get frustrated and they give up, and so they're just not going to keep at it. And this comes, the basic center of it comes from Coker 2022, and then I added on a little bit. Students are introduced to standards that they have not yet mastered at this age, and this development zone of proximal development portrays the stages students will go through as they are introduced and given experience with the information. At first, students will not be able to apply the information and master the objective independently. They will be given guidance to master the standards. This will give them more time to apply and understand new concepts accurately. After time and more experience, students will be able to master the object independently. So you have scaffolding. Scaffolding can be defined as the process of receiving support from learned individuals to master material. Just think of a house that is being built. The purpose of scaffolding is to temporarily support the structure of the house until it can stand on its own. According to Vygotsky, this applies to learning as well. Learners receive support from knowledgeable people until they acquire complete mastery of the respective material. Think, for instance, about a parent who is teaching his kid to ride a bicycle. They will start with training wheels, then the parent will provide instruction and help the child hold the bicycle steady until the child is ready to ride on his own. Once the child rides the bicycle independently, the ZBD shifts toward upward and may include hands-free riding or stunts. But let's face it, only if they're wearing a helmet. That's an important part. Coker 2022. And so my graphic over here come from Avella 2022, and it's just showing you how scaffolding works. So the way in which a teacher provides students with frameworks and experiences which encourage them to extend their existing schemata and incorporate new skills and competencies and understanding. And so that's by and McLeod on 2024. And so ZBTD has to take place in the zone of proximal development. 5 ways that you can scaffold is engage a child's interest, maintain that child's interest in the task, avoiding distractions, and providing clear instructions on how to start the task. Number 3, keeping the child's frustration under control by supporting interactions, adapting instructions according to where the child is struggling, emphasizing the important features of the task, and demonstrating the task, showing the child how to do the task in simple, clear steps, by and McLeod 2024. Describe how this is appropriate. Well, students in this age range must master specific objectives and standards independently. Several of these concepts are new, and the teacher must scaffold the instructions so the students learn how to apply and interpret the information they are given accurately. They must slowly withdraw their guidance to allow students to master the standards independently. So we're moving on to Skinner's operant conditioning. So here's a graphic that I took from Sprout School in 2020. Consequences will increase or decrease a behavior, and a response has to be maintained to be a behavior to keep getting the same response. And so that's the basis of Skinner's operant conditioning, and this graphic illustrates it very well. So you have this dog, and the dog wants to get a cookie. So, the dog does something that he gets rewarded for, and so he gets this cookie. So when he figures out that he's going to get the reward, then he's more likely to do that behavior again. Something else, he does something that he's supposed to do, you take away a negative, like taking off his leash. And so if he learns that every time he does something he's supposed to do, he's going to get that leash taken away, he's a lot more likely to keep repeating that behavior. And then there's the punishment. There's something unpleasant. And so if they're going to get something that's unpleasant when they do something, then they're a lot more likely to not do it. And then if you take something away from them when they do something that they're bad. So, say you take their favorite toy away or their favorite rug away, then they're a lot more likely not to repeat something that's going to feel like a punishment to them. And this comes from Sprouts 2020. So, operant conditioning. Free will is non-existent. Must be able to observe the behavior. Behavior is either random or a reaction to the environment. And when an organism encounters a stimulus, it results in a behavior change. And Skinner tested the theory with the Skinner box. He placed a mouse in the box, and when the mouse hits the lever, it receives food. And every time the mouse performed the desired action, the mouse received the food. Eventually, the mouse learned to perform the desired action when the mouse wanted the food. And that's from Sprouts 2020. And that leads us into the graphic. So, here you go. You got this mouse. He accidentally hit the lever. When he hit the lever, he got the food. He goes, So at some point, he accidentally hit it again. The same thing happened. So he finally figured out that if he hit that lever, he was going to get that food. This graphic comes from Sprouts Schools of 2020. So our daughter has a dog, and what she's done is she's taught the dog that if the dog sits, the dog turns, then the dog gets a treat. And so the dog has learned that when she wants a treat on her own, she'll sit, she'll catch you looking at her. She'll sit, she'll turn, and she'll look at you. She's wanting her treat. Well, if she sits and turns and she doesn't get her treat, then she turns and she does it again. So, if you don't do anything at that point, she's going to come over and she's going to nudge you. She's going to back up. She's going to sit. She's going to turn. She's going to sit. She's going to turn. She's going to look at you. At that point, she is very much telling you, I expect my treat. I did what I'm supposed to do to get my treat. It's pretty funny watching her. She's a really smart dog. So, using Skinner's operant conditioning description, here's some strategies. So, you're going to remove a desired reward. Students who have behavioral infractions at our schools collect points. And when they reach a certain number, they lose their privilege to attend fun day in the gym. And I've been told that the process reduced behavior issues by 70% in the 2 years in the second year that the system was in place at the school. Number 2, verbal praise. It's used for students who do what they have been asked to do, such as closing their laptops. Number 3, token collections. You can hand out fake money for designated behaviors or performance goals. And on a set schedule, they can buy a prize of their choice from the treasure box if they have enough money. The students learn that the more goals they reach, the more money or fake money they will earn, which results in more trips to the treasure box. And number 4, reinforce positive behaviors with a reward. So an example in my class, when students immediately begin the task, I will give the first couple of kids a piece of candy. The students learn to get a piece of candy, they have to be one of the first ones working. And so that gets them all working a little bit faster. Our description of social emotional milestones with this age group. So in the 13, 14-year-olds, and the information I found was for 14 to 18-year-olds, but it says social emotional skills are learned through interactions and relationships in children between 14 and 18 years. This can look like developing multiple friendships from different social circles, becoming more self-aware, and being able to understand points of view. In addition, adolescents begin to become more interested in dating their peers and exploring more intimate romantic relationships. Corley 2022. And I do say you do have to watch those 8th graders. Also, exploring and asking questions about life, relationships, genders, etc. They're moody. They want to establish independence, and they're dealing with hormonal changes. Boy, aren't they. Self-conscious. They're self-centered, focused on self, often leaving them self-conscious even in false circumstances. So they may think, oh, such and such is looking at me, and this is why. And it may not have anything to do with that at all, but in their mind, that because they're self-conscious, that's what's going on. Friendships are more important in their lives. They're more important than parents. at least in their mind. Developing identity, they seek separation from the family to find themselves and experiment to help them establish who they are as an individual. And fluctuating self-esteem, the mood and self-esteem tides can roll from high to low as fast as the ocean tides. Gordon, 2024. Erickson's psychosocial theory. Erickson maintained that personality develops in a predetermined order through 8 stages of psychosocial development, and from infancy to adulthood. During each stage, the person experiences a psychosocial crisis that could positively or negatively affect personal development. For Erickson, these crises are psychosocial because they involve the psychological needs of the individual, conflicting with the needs of society. According to the theory, success and completion of each stage results in a healthy personality and the acquisition of basic virtues. Basic virtues are characteristic strengths that the ego can use to resolve subsequent crises. Failure to complete a stage can result in a reduced ability to complete further stages, and therefore a more healthy personality and sense of self. These stages, however, can be resolved successfully at the later time. McLeod, 2024. Erickson accepted Freud's emphasis on stages, but focused on the crucial role of social experience at each stage of development. He made 2 additional important changes. First, instead of psychosexual conflicts, he thought the issue at each stage was a psychosocial crisis that had to be resolved. For example, at age 2, toilet training is only a minor issue. The overreaching issue is the child's growing need to achieve some autonomy from their parent. This need for independence must be balanced by the parent's need to help the child learn socially appropriate behavior and family routines. Manus, 2017. So Erickson's stages of social development. So at the age of infant to 18 months, there's a trust-mistrust and the virtuous hope. 18 months to 3 years, they're going to be struggling with autonomy versus shame and doubt, virtue, hope, will. The virtue developed will. 3 to 5 years, psychoanalysis, the crisis is initiative versus guilt. Virtue, purpose. 5 to 13 years, crisis, industry versus inferiority, virtue, competency. 13 to 21 years, identity versus confusion, and the virtue is fidelity, and this is where my kids are. 21 to 39 years, intimacy versus isolation, virtue, love. 40 to 65 years, generative versus stagnation, virtue, care. 65 and older, integrity versus despair, and that's virtue is wisdom. This comes from HQ 2021. Social emotional domain, Erickson. So I made this table, but I took it straight out of Manus 2017. It was the table of 1.1 in the textbook. So birth to 1 year, basic trust versus mistrust. A sensitive, responsive mother helps her infant trust the world. A negative, harsh, neglectful mother fosters basic mistrust of people. 1 to 3 years, anatomy versus shame and doubt. Erickson believed that the overarching issue at this stage was the child's growth need to achieve autonomy from the parent. Example, a 2.5-year-old wants to be the one to open and close doors and to increasingly interested in dressing himself and brushing his teeth. According to Erickson, if parents are too controlling or do not allow the child to act on his own, the child will feel the shame rather than the autonomy. 3 to 6 years, initiative versus guilt. Children want to be capable like their parents. Supportive parents encourage a sense of initiative. Over-controlling parents promote feelings of guilt and failure. 6 to 11 years. Industry versus inferiority. Children try to master culturally valued tasks and compare themselves with peers. A lack of success promotes feelings of inferiority. Adolescence. Identity versus role confusion. And individuals try to develop an integrated sense of self and set out of adult roles or fail to achieve these and experience confusion. Early adulthood, intimacy versus isolation. A sense of identity leads to the formation of mature, intimate relationships, but failure leads to feelings of isolation. So describe a stage of Erickson's psychosocial theory these individuals are at. So this graphic does pretty well at that. The identity versus role confusion. Individuals try to develop an integrated sense of self instead of adult roles or fail to achieve these and experience confusion. So this is Colin 2017. And the big thing is, what do I want to do in my life? Who do I want to be? What profession do I want to do? So how are these psychosocial stage affects how we'll work with individuals in age range? So I've got that 13 to 14-year-old ages. Well, teachers must demonstrate that they respect the students' self-identities and cultures. As students are, at least subconsciously, looking for mentors, we need to show them by our actions what it means to be responsible and a good citizen. When we make mistakes, we must show them the proper way to respond to the realization that I messed up. We need to develop positive relationships with all students because they will learn socially and emotionally from us. We must encourage them to ask tough questions and be willing to have open conversations in our classrooms about things in our students' minds. We need to teach them what responsibility looks like and hold them accountable for their decisions. We also need to give our students choices in how they will complete assignments. This gives them a sense of empowerment in their lives. So some of the strategies are, number one, give students a choice to help them feel in control of their lives. An example of this is differentiation in school projects. The student gets to choose their project, the presentation style, etc. Number two, give students assigned jobs and responsibilities in the classroom, which gives them a sense of purpose. Number three, identity versus role confusion. An adolescent strives to figure out who they are. We can support them in the classroom by providing examples of good role models with whom they can identify. This can be done in several ways. By posting pictures and short biographical information on the classroom walls from various scientists from various cultures. So if they see somebody that's been a scientist that's part of their culture or come from their circumstances, then that's a positive for them. Help arrange for students to job shadow professionals in the community. Invite guest speakers to class who students can identify with and who would be good role models. Or third, post students' work in the classroom who have done well on a project or assignment. And I do this on a routine basis. And the kids will go, they'll come up and say, is my stuff going to get posted this time, Miss Austin? Do you want to keep mine, Miss Austin? And so it does mean something to a lot of the kids. Explain moral development. So Kohlberg has 3 levels in his moral development theory. He has the pre-conventional level. A decision about right or wrong hinges on whether a reward or punishment can be avoided. If the answer is yes, it is a morally positive decision. This stage of cognitive development occurs in middle childhood. You got your conventional level. Children can reach the ability in adolescence to think morally at the conventional level, and this level of thinking continues to occur into adulthood. As is conventional level, what is right or moral or wrong and immoral, the individual mindset is wrapped around, is it legal? And does it conform to the norm of my culture? Your post conventional level, moral or immoral morality is based on age-old fundamental rights. So the Constitution of the United States is based on these rights, such as freedom of speech. Another example is the debate on abortions. Is it about the mother's right of choice, or does the baby have rights? If the baby has rights, at what stage in the womb do those rights begin? This level of moral thinking is reached in adolescence and adulthood, and some individuals never reach this level. So Kohlberg used moral situations for examples. The situation of a man whose wife is dying and cannot afford the drug to help her demonstrate the differences in the stages of moral development to test his theory. This was done in our textbook in Manus 2017. So this little graphic here was resourced from Collins 2017, and it's using that drug study that Kohlberg did. So level 1 you have 3 levels, and then within those levels, each level has 2 different stages. And so you have level 1, which is pre-conventional. Stage 1, avoid punishment. I won't steal the drug because I don't want to go to jail. Number 1. Stage 2, what's in it for me? I would steal the drug because if I steal the drug and my wife lives, I'll be considered a hero. Level 2, conventional. So stage 3, roles or norms. A good boy or a girl, they don't steal. A good husband would steal to save his wife's life. Then stage 4, still unconventional. Follow the rules and maintain society norms. I will not steal because it's against the law. Most honest people would steal to save their wife's life. Then you go up to the level 3, which is post-conventional. And this is where my kids, they should be getting to this stage. Or in this stage. Stage 5, social contracts. I would not steal because respect of property ownership is all important part of maintaining laws and societal order. I would not steal the drug because the law cannot justify losing a human life. And so you'll have some of my kids that they've reached this stage, and some that definitely have nowhere close to reach this stage. And then level 3, post-conventional. And they say that just not all people reach this. And Kohlberg's, it's in this graphic, it says that Kohlberg swore that stage 6 actually exists. And it's that saving the most amount of lives possible is always the best decision. And so I think it's interesting enough. I do have a couple of kids this last year that they're in a stage 6. And we're friends with a family that we've known, this family and their kids, the whole life of these children. And this one boy, their middle child, he is actually a sophomore in college now. But he has always absolutely amazed me in his level of being able to have deep thinking. And you could have stage 6 conversations with him when he was 10 years old. It was absolutely amazing. And so it does exist. So how does this moral development affect how I'm going to work with my kids? So students in the 8th grade, 13 to 14-year-olds, are in a mixture of Goldberg states. Almost all the students will have stage 4 in varying percentages. Some are in stage 5 and stage 6. And it's important to get to know my students and determine which stage they are in mentally development. Once you understand their stage, you can meet them on their level when issues arise. This can help you respond to them in situations that develop in your classrooms. We also have the opportunity to guide them as they continue their development in this area. It was interesting last year to listen and see how they think. We would talk about things where morality would come into play. The role the students' ethnic culture played was usually obvious in how they felt about moral issues. So some strategies that can be used. Number 1, set clear rules for the classroom. When a rule is violated, ask the students, why did you break the rule? And allow them to explain their reasoning. As students talk through the rules and they talk through what they did, it gives them additional opportunity to evaluate their actions, which can lead to critical thinking and growth. Number 2, have students debate moral situational issues. Previously established norms and expectations in the classroom for students to respect each other during the process. That's very important because they love to dig on each other. Debating allows the students to share their feelings and hear the opinions of others. Students learn from each other, so hearing how others think can help advance them to a higher stage. And number 3, give assignments to students and ask questions in the classroom that cause them to reflect on their moral values internally. So, my summary. Current educational setting. I teach 8th grade in a middle school, which is 6th through 8th grade. That serves approximately 850 students, which is comprised of roughly 75% of minority students who are in their age range of 12 years 11 months to 14 years 11 months, which I use 13 to 14-year-olds for this assignment. The school is physically located on the fringe of the city. However, it serves multiple communities, including some classified as inner city communities. The students live in homes with social economic status of poverty to the middle class. I teach the traditional section of the school which does not serve gifted or high achieving and honor students. I teach 8th grade science. I have 88 to 120 students depending on the year. So what is the importance of using developmental appropriate practices in physical, cognitive, and social emotional domains? It is essential to use developmentally appropriate practices. I've listed all three together because by doing so, we are looking at the whole child. As we educate our children, all three act as puzzle pieces, and when even one piece is not treated with care, our child is not whole. Our students are served best when we take the time and energy to get to know them individually and cultivate a positive relationship with them. Knowing our students gives us the keys to unlocking the development and appropriate practices for each of them. As we choose our practices, we should look for high-quality instructional materials that allows our children to direct and own their learning, and for us teachers to act as facilitators. So number one, physical domain. The physical domain of development starts before birth and continues through adolescence. It refers to anything that influences a child's ability to control their body, including fine and gross motor skills. A child's environment, opportunities to develop, and factors from genetic mutations to ACEs that affect the brain and its development, which controls physical aspects, will all play a role in how a child develops physically. Cognitive development is influenced by nature and nurture, and in this class we studied several different theories. Piaget's has 4 stages and revolves around schema. Bandura's social is where the environment, personal factors, and behavior affect each other, and we learned in the Bobo study that children imitate the behavior model for them, especially when it leaves a large impression on them. Zygotti's social cognition and social cultural theory, peers, adults, and cultural belief influence learning. The zone of proximity is the sweet spots teachers need to target for students to learn. They struggle beyond what they know, but not so much that they get frustrated and give up. And then you got scaffolding, which must take place in the zone of proximity. It involves gradual releasing knowledge, and students can handle it alone. And then you have Skinner's operant conditioning, that rewards and reinforcements change behavior. We saw this demonstrated with the mouse, which learned that it could receive food when it is pushed a lever. Then you move on to your social emotional domain. You got Erickson's 8 stages with a crisis in each stage to be solved. If the crisis is not resolved, development later in life will be hindered. And then you got Goldberg's moral development theory. Has 3 levels and 6 stages. They extend to the end of adolescence and the beginning of young adulthood. It's the development of how we make our moral decisions, from avoiding getting in trouble and advancing to looking at universal ethical principles. This brings us to my references. Avella for the Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Avella 22 for the Vygotsky's social cultural theory. By McLeod from 2024. Vygotsky's social cultural theory of cognitive development. Cherry 2024, what is Piaget's theory of cognitive development, from Very Well Mind. Collin for Goldberg's theory of moral development explained. Dixon, social cognitive theory of full summary and evaluation. Drobniak, 11 awesome fine motor activities for teens. Gordon, 13-year-old adult development milestones. Elliott, striking a balance, understanding equilibrium, and Piaget's theory from Magnified Mind. Kurt, Vygotsky's theories and how to incorporate theories in the classroom. And that should have been done over right there. I've got a little mistake right there. Lee, 2021, Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. Manus, which is our textbook, Reveal for the Dynamic Child. McLeod, Piaget's stages, 4 stages of cognitive development in theory. Nickerson, Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. Orlando, fine motor skills in adolescence. Filio notes, Bandura's social learning theory. Query M, adolescence development, 14 to 18 years. Surrocat, Holiday's theories and how to incorporate his theories in the classroom. This concludes my project.